what I'm testifying to here is how themes made me do covenant groups an entirely different way. So this is the Soul Matters model that a number of us developed, right? Soul Matters is a different type of covenant group. Now it's a sharing circle of 80 congregations. I don't want to take total credit for this. It's a number of people that over the years kind of came, that using themes helped us rethink how we did small groups. And remember, I haven't just talked about themes, I've talked about how the themes focused us on daily living. Like that's an example. Remember when I talked about the themes led us to, well, we got to pick a theme that focused on people's daily living. There was a lot of that stuff that was connected in the water of themes that just changed how we thought. Again, going all the way back to that keystone habit idea. You do this one change, you just start thinking about everything differently. You have different lenses on, you have a different mindset, and it changes everything. So for us, the big thing is, what's my, again, for a lot of the reasons I named, we wanted to ensure that the themes changed lives, not just stimulated minds. So the big thing is how to use these themes not to just do the traditional Unitarian thing of over-intellectualize them and analyze them, but how to use them to go deeper. Okay, so Soul Matters is different in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to go through these pretty quick, but 6 different ways. And I would argue any of these things are things you could bring to your small group program. Okay, if you're doing an adult covenant group program, the way you do the covenant groups wouldn't just be by having them follow a theme, but these are some other ways to use the theme in them. So the first thing that I want to highlight is in a sense the deep listening and formative space. That I think is common to all groups, right? But what theme-based church does to that's different from covenant groups that are cut off. Remember when I said small groups are a way of going deeper into the worship theme? It changes what this deep listening formative space means for us. You see what I mean? All of a sudden it's a different kind of discernment. And I would argue what it does by having themes putting small groups as a way to go deeper into the worship themes, it changes them from discussion groups and puts them much more closer to what I would call spiritual direction circles. Because then what you do is after you've heard this sermon on the theme, you really are going into your small group not just to go deeper into it, but to figure out how it applies to my life. And those of you who've done spiritual direction know that that's the work of spiritual direction. How is life calling me to do this? So you see where I'm going with that? It changes the nature, and so it makes our small groups start to be more like spiritual direction circles. And what we know by studies is that at the same pace that institutional church is dropping in the crapper, people's participation in spiritual direction is going up equally. So if we want to get into that market, we can do it just boringly by just, I don't know, turning all our people and doing it straight on and just starting to have spiritual directors in our church, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. Or we can start to realize there's some tweaks we can do to our own programming that get at that same need. There's a hunger out there for that kind of spiritual direction. How is this playing out in my life? How is my life calling me to be a person? So enough said on that, but that's big, not to miss that. Explore worship themes in more depth. The third one is an invitation to experience the worship theme, not just talk about it. When you sit in Soul Matters groups, the first thing after you do check-in is you share what you did with your spiritual exercise that month. So Soul Matters does not just have questions on the theme. You get, if you're in a Soul Matters group, a month before your group, the packet you get gives you 2 to 4 spiritual exercises that you're supposed to do before you even come to the group. And each of those spiritual exercises invite you, they're exercises that make you engage the spiritual theme in your daily living. So before you get there, you've had to live out, or again, experience the theme, not just talk about it. So for instance, how am I doing on time? All right, I'm going to tell some of these stories. These are just too fun. So real quick, this one will be a little manic and quick, but it was a month of what does it mean to be a people of grace, right? The spiritual assignment that month was watch the movie Amelie. How many people know the movie Amelie? It was about 10 years ago, foreign film. It's basically a French woman who secretly goes around and makes people's lives better. Watch Amelie, and then I wrote a whole piece about how for Unitarians and for liberal religious folks, grace isn't just something we receive, but we're also the givers of grace. So your spiritual assignment, your spiritual mission this month, if you're willing to accept it, is be grace. Be grace. Find a way to go out and be grace. And so we had, and then when you come to your group, you know, what you do is you go around and share how you did that and how it transformed you, where it took you. So a lot of people did cool stuff, like, interesting, a lot was around money. So we had people that went through toll booths and said, here's $50 to $100. The next folks are just free. We had a ton of people that did, like, you know, went to Starbucks and $100, and the best story was in my group. I felt like the guy gave $100 to Starbucks, and then his sharing in the group was, I wanted to be grace, and I wrote the rules of be grace. The assignment was, you had to do it in a way that was sneaky, where you couldn't be thanked, because that's not grace. You know, that's not grace if you're a gift. There's something else there, right? So he talked about struggling. He said, all right, I didn't want to be thanked. But I wanted to see the joy.
Right.
So he snuck in the corner and he sat, but he had this whole big, deep theological reflection on whether or not that was cheating or not. I mean, and it made him think about what does it mean when we try to give grace. And then he just said, you know, I ended up feeling, this was beautiful, he said, in the end, we also have to be givers of grace to ourselves. So why was I struggling for that first half hour of should I be there or not, or was I cheating? I wasn't giving grace. And I'm like, oh my God, this is part, you know, he wasn't analyzing the Unitarian concept of grace versus the Presbyterian. You know, he came up with this whole other thing because of the exercise. I don't have time to do it, but what you had to do with her? Karen, my wife, she was going to do Be Grace. She was going to go down to the bus. She's all excited. Was going to say, "See you. I'll be gone for 4 hours. I'm going to hop on the public bus. I'm going to give them $100. I'm going to travel around on the bus for the next 4 hours and watch people just be happy on their day." She walked out of the door. Literally 15 minutes later, the door opens. Like, babe, is everything okay? And she does her hyperventilation cry. It's like, you know, she's, they would not let me do it. And she got on the bus, and she tried to give the money, and the bus driver had said, "Lady, it just doesn't work that way." She goes, no, I know, but I'm a minister. Lady, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work. And I know, but it's for our small group, it's for our church group. Lady, it doesn't. And all of a sudden, people behind her, "Lady, would you get going?" The people "Lady, would you?" And suddenly the whole bus turned on her. And then that led, of course, to I think one of her most beautiful sermons about, you know, the challenges of giving grace and blocking grace in human beings. How when we try, you know, it just, wow, you know, and when so think about that. How the theme, again, having a theme where you don't just stimulate your head, but change your life and make it go into your life. The spiritual exercises are such a huge piece of that that I would lift up. Whole bunch of tips when I do a day-long thing. There's a whole bunch of tips for how to do a spiritual exercise to make it work well. You know, because it's harder than you think. I gave you kind of the two, like Be Grace. That was a great one, but it's hard to come up with these every month. There's some tips, and also again being part of a sharing circle. Now, and with 80 people, I am part of the group that puts the packet together. We get 20 ideas for exercises, so I just don't even make them up anymore. I just pick the 3 that are best, but doing it together, you know, matters. Questions to walk with, not walk through. Again, what we're trying to do is fight this over-intellectualizing thing. So in Soul Matters, unlike in other covenant groups, you don't just get you don't get like 10 questions in the group that you discuss. What you do is you get a list of about 12 questions, and your assignment prior to coming to your group is to spend the month reading through those 12 questions, over and over and over and over again until one of them pops out in neon lights. So your goal is not to answer the questions, but find out which of those questions is yours. And once you figure it out, you put it on your mirror, you hold it, you live with that question for the month, and then you come to your group. And after you've gone around, done the deep listening, you go around in a circle, and you share what you did for your spiritual exercise and how it impacted your life and changed your view. So the facilitator has you pause, does a little bit of back and forth talking process, then you move on to your question. Facilitator doesn't walk you through the 10 questions. All the facilitator does is let's do deep listening. Everybody go around and share which question you picked and where it led you this month. You see what I mean? Like, just radically different way of sharing. So you're not analyzing a question, you're saying, this was the question, that was mine. So for instance, during the month of blessing, and these are really tricky. This is why you have to do it as a team. Writing questions that will become somebody's companion, or different things, questions you write to analyze a topic. So they're always present-day focused. I don't want to go too deep into this, but for instance with blessing, we use that packet to talk about blessing and how you bless people with all different kinds of things with song. So we had this as, who around you needs help finding their song? You could have said who around you needs help, who needs a blessing, but who needs finding their voice? Again, that's not, do you believe in blessings? Do you think blessings really work? This is who around you needs that kind of blessing. During honesty, one of the questions was, what is the most honest thing you need to do right now? Now you can imagine if you're reading these questions and that one pops out for you, you got some hard work. Freedom. Some of those questions were, are you trapped in the escape from pain? I won't tell that was a powerful story. When the person who shared that was their question for a month realized, oh my God, when I saw that question, I realized that I'm not trapped in pain. I'm trapped in always trying to run away from pain. I mean, just a level of depth of sharing that on freedom that was just, hugely powerful. Has age left you feeling more free or less? Again, whole different take. So the bottom line on that, though, is that, again, these questions are a whole different way of coming at the theme. And again, well, I'm repeating myself a little bit, but maybe I'll just do it one more time. That's why it's this keystone thing. Theming is just a different way of thinking that's not just this simplistic, organize everything according to themes. Theme-based church is really about using themes to get into your living, not just to create new ideas. The other one is, again, another distinctive piece is remind that Unitarian Universalism is distinctive. We've talked about that before. Even in these sharing circles, the packet that comes out does have an intro, but that intro is always just a guide for the religious leaders of the church. You always rewrite it, but it's your chance to be the resident theologian for all your people. So the intro of the packet isn't a folksy story about freedom, or when in my life what I learned about honesty. Your intro is, here's what Unitarian Universalism has to say about it. It's always a theological moment to remember we have something distinctive to say about this theme. It's that theological literacy piece. It's always in your intro. And then the last one creates community. This one I just throw in there a little bit. How do I explain how this came up? Because theme-based church suddenly started to make us look for, remember how my story started about the role of the church is to heal spiritual disconnection? That led us to, for me, theme-based church is how do we heal organizational disconnection? So when you all of a sudden become a theme-based church person, you're just infected now. You can't look around your organization without seeing where things are disconnected or siloed or broken apart. You're constantly trying to fix those things. And so when you find ways to overlap jobs or break people out, break this area, unsilo things, that's your mentality. And so all of that led us to change what the role of the small group facilitator was. So when you're asked to be a small group Soul Matters facilitator, you are asked to you have 3 jobs. You are the facilitator of the group. So facilitator, meaning the facilitator of the group, like I said, which isn't burdensome, right? Because you don't have to walk people through questions. You just have to say, now we share their questions. It's also easier than any other model. So you're not intimidated, which is going to lull you for the last thing, right? So you start off with a thing, and it's going to be easy, right? Second thing is your pastor, which means you right away ask them. You don't have to do the pastoral care for the group, but you're the one in charge of making sure the group takes care of itself. You can do it yourself. You can recruit 2 or 3 other people, or you can set systems, but you're in charge of making sure that the group takes care of itself. Facilitator, pastor, and the last one, pledge drive captain. You are the one that also, given that everything's connected and everything's about spiritual depth, which means we don't believe money isn't separate at all. You also are the one that takes 15 minutes of the group during pledge time, and you explain what the pledge drive theme is, and you explain your own personal sharing, and you let them know that next month you'll be collecting the envelopes. Now, I'm also just telling you that for the heck of it, because I know you people struggle with things. That last one may have nothing to do with theme-based. Use that. I have a whole other workshop about pledge campaign stuff. We had no collection problem. Maybe you guys have already solved that, but how many people have like 40% of your pledges out? Hardly anything. Because Charlie calls me on the phone while I'm having dinner, asks me for my pledge card. I don't know Charlie. But Scott, who runs my group, oh shoot, Scott's getting my card next month. I better get it into because I don't want to. You see what I mean? So, use that if you want. But the whole point of that, besides the technical thing, is that putting that person in that small group, it's that mentality of how to bring roles together and things together, and you just start to think differently, and your church becomes more integrated and more efficient.